I grew up in France, where I was born in 1980, 5 years after my father emigrated to France. So I grew up in Paris' suburb called Meudon. It's a small town where you had an Orthodox church, and a few emigres settled down in Meudon in 1917 or 1921 after the Russian Revolution. So my grandmother used to live there with my grandfather, and they welcomed my father, who came to France with basically nothing. So that's where he had his first place, his first house, where I grew up. He sent me to the local Catholic school, although we're not Catholic, and I happily lived a very beautiful youth, playing tennis nearly every day with my father, and moved to school at the age of 12 to Paris to play even more tennis. Today I've become a farmer. I farm with my business partner. We farm 150 hectares southwest, in the southwest of France, in Toulouse. So we have converted 150 hectares that were devoted to classic conventional corn production, and we have converted it into the largest organic Regen almond orchard in France. Some of my hobbies or passions, again, I'm very much involved being outside. So I'm a keen beginner alpinist. I like hiking with the kids. I could live in the US, no problem. So snowboarding, skiing, windsurfing. Windsurfing, I would say, is my passion. This is really my core hobby. I can windsurf in the winter in cold temperatures, anywhere. I got mad, a bit like chess players. I can relate to chess players who have really who burn really bright with their passion. I was reading windsurfing magazines at school. I was hiding in the back of the class. I had posters all over my room. I still have them. My wife is happy about this. So this is my number one passion. My personal relationship to chess is quite unique because I've been really bathing in chess since my most tender age. I was traveling for chess tournaments. I was always in my father's luggage. We went to, back in the days, a country that no longer exists, Yugoslavia, very often, because he had good relationships there. So these were very happy moments of childhood, where in beautiful settings with everybody inviting us, people being very cheerful and hospitable to my family. It gave me a lot, although I never participated myself in the game. My father taught me chess at a very young age. Some problems. He saw that I was not really interested, that I didn't have great talent, so maybe both, they go together sometimes. And I could, many chess players were coming to our place. All life evolved around chess because we had chess boards everywhere. And it allowed me to meet very clever people who were kind of outside the world of, outside of material contingencies, or let's say material constraints, because chess players, the ones I met, were coming mostly from the Soviet Union, because that was really, back in the days, the greatest center for chess. Yeah, it's always a joke, but they always looked a bit lousy. They didn't belong to the Western world. They had their own passion. They were discussing certain subjects. They were very keen on history, on literature. It was a completely separate world, so it wasn't really attracting as something fun as surfing can be in the US, or everybody knows about Pipeline, the extreme games. I'm more of a kind of a California boy, or I was more of a fan of this. And chess, at the same time, it showed me that you had some people who could really live in a completely intellectual world and be happy, a bit like crazy scientists, or people who are theoretical physics specialists or professors. And I saw very strong players, of course, among them my father, who was a very humble and kind man. And I saw Michotal. I saw many different players who were never arrogant. People were quite calm and polite. So then it always allows you to take a step back when you see people in everyday's life, because they have a certain level in a particular job, VP, whatever, in a bank, who show a bit of arrogance because they've achieved a certain position. But if you kind of unzoom, you see that there's no reason. If you see such giants like Michotal, who was coming to our house with just a piece of paper, happy with some silotka, some dry fish, and a glass of vodka and a cigarette, and decent shirt, why bother? So no, it was quite fascinating. So I've been bathing in chess all my life, and I still am somehow. I consider my skill level in chess to be extremely low, and I can only have one point of comparison. I think it's my 10-year-old son. I put him at a chess club at school 3 years ago. At the beginning, it was very easy. I could beat him every time. At some point, I noticed that I had to pay attention. I couldn't be writing emails on the side or doing something. And then we went to the other level where when I made a mistake or didn't pay attention, he would beat me. I got a bit mad, and because he has stopped chess now, I think it's quite even. So I play at the level of my 10-year-old son, who did not make it to qualify for the Paris Championships at the age of 8. So that's somewhere quite low. I have 3 sons. Alexander is the eldest, 10-year-old son. He's been at the chess club, and I even drove him to tournaments. Theodore doesn't play much, but he plays chess once a week at school, but that's not a club, that's just like an activity. And my wife Capucine doesn't play chess much. No, she doesn't play. I taught her the rules before we got married. And Theodore and Alex tend to play chess. We have an anti-iPad policy at home with no video games. So here's the chessboard. And it's been used less for the past 2 years, but there's been, after the 3 days in St. Louis, a certain revival of interest, I see. I don't even see a connection between chess and art, these are rhetorics, but to me chess is an art, because that's what my father always taught me. He mentioned style very often. He always considered himself as maybe not the most regular player, or say, how do you call it in English, regulars. Even in his results along his career, he had some up and downs. And he always referred to people like Michetal or Bronstein, who had really sharp attacking styles, and he saw chess as a manifestation of your own character. And the truth is that he never had, let's say, friends. All his friends were more artists than that. Maybe linked to the sociology of the Soviet Union, because you had an intelligentsia, you had an intellectual elite. There was a party of the elite, or an evening of the intelligentsia every year. So you had astronauts, dancers, musicians, actors, and that was his crew during the Soviet period. So he was surrounded by artists. They all knew each other. The Rostropovich, the dancers, Nureyev. We had some dancers, ballet dancers at home. I grew up in that surrounding. So to me, it formed part of one ensemble, as we call it. It was chess was one of the arts that we saw at home. I first heard of the exhibition. I was browsing the internet. I was looking at what was happening in chess. Sometimes I do Google my father's name to see what's going on in Russia in both Cyrillic or Latin letters, see what is the latest news. And I saw that there was an exhibition in St. Louis. I had heard of the Hall of Fame. I had learned about the chess club, but very briefly. So I decided to get in touch because I had so many things that I thought I could share. So I reached out to Emily, and that's how we got into touch. Growing up with an acclaimed chess master or grandmaster or champion, to me was quite easy, because I didn't feel like I was maybe Bill Clinton's son, or that must have been difficult for Chelsea Clinton. I was the son of a chess player. Very few people knew in France, because that was already the dawn of his career. He's much less famous in France than he is here, because we follow less of chess and we follow less Bobby Fischer, who was an icon in America. So it's still famous. People who are in their 50s or 60s all know about the game, but I was completely anonymous. We had Nigel Short at home when my father was helping him to prepare for the match against Kasparov. I think he spent maybe a week or a couple of weeks with us. I've seen, it was a couple of years ago already, Joël Lautier spent some time at their house as well. Joël was a very strong, I think he was the #1 grandmaster in France. At the end, decided he would never conquer the world title. So went on to become an investment banker, very successful banker in Russia. So I saw all these chess players in my youth. I saw Professor Hübner, still very impressed by the fact that he was an Egyptologist, a professor at university, plus one of the best chess players in the world. I saw Hübner in '88 as a child in New Zealand, so it struck me. So this man is because when you're 8 years old, you learn about Egypt. And say, oh, this man can read the hieroglyphs and he can play chess as well. So okay, I would describe him as a very laid-back person with a very good sense of humor, not taking himself seriously, which is quite a rare occurrence for someone of that level. So. He had a bit of a sense of humor, maybe like the Brits. So he was laughing at himself and never really taking himself as for someone famous or important. He never thought of himself as an important person, because the people who he was spending time with were very good friends with a guy called Pierre Svitkov. He was a Czech guy from Russian origin who was a bootleg kind of garage owner. I don't know even how you call it. He was basically fixing cars on the black market. So we're spending hours with him. He was coming to our holiday home. So no, he had some pretty strange and not strange friends, but he would mingle with very, very different people. The relevance of the Cuban table I have is an interesting question, because I've got no clue. Normally when you emigrate, you take a suitcase, your passport, but from what I understand, that he moved from Russia to France with one item, and it's the Cuban table. So I've got no clue how he packed it. No, you can take the legs out and fold it, but it's a huge thing, so it's really very inconvenient. So what I think of the chess campus is very simple. It's an amazing place in the sense that it makes chess looks cool, sexy, and appealing to the youth and people from every walk of life. So that's what I said. It's like a Noah's Ark, especially for people from. You still have lots of people from Eastern Europe who are chess fans, and for the political reasons we all know, do not want to stay in this region of the world. And here they find a safe setting. It's a safe haven for chess players. And as I said, the exhibition is very colorful. It looks like a surfing exhibition because, of course, the graphic designer said I applied the color code of the 70s. So it looks extremely fun and cool. So the role he played in a 1972 chess match, he always thought of it as a chess player, because all the fuss around it, political, geostrategic, he never mentioned it, and I'm pretty sure that he felt the pressure because, of course, the Soviets were pushing. But my father never saw it this way, and as I said, he was not really thinking himself as a chess champion. I only got the human story, that at the end he was very much under pressure for having lost a game. They started bothering him. They never mentioned to send him to a gulag. That's I think some people have mentioned this story. I believe it's fairy tales, but he was not allowed to travel, which is very painful as a professional chess player because you can't do anymore. It's like breaking your career. And then it kind of allowed him to escape the Soviet Union because he was against it. He didn't want to do it the way Korchnoi did it. Let's say getting a visa to stay to play for a tournament and then stay in the country where he got the visa. He confronted the authorities very directly, saying, "Look, I'm going to leave from here." So they said, "No, you can't. I want to marry this lady. Please let me go." And so for me, 72, I've always had it presented in my family as the prequel to his escape from the Soviet Union, because he got bothered by the authorities, then met my mother, and suddenly she said, "Let's get married." He said, "Let's go." And both the Soviet authorities and the French authorities were against it. So they were the first ones to benefit from the Helsinki Accord. So I see it much more from a family standpoint. I understand that I would not have existed if he had not lost the game. So, but that's my personal deep impression. I think he was very happy. That's what he said many times and publicly. He was happy to lose the game because it allowed him to. It set him free to do different things, and I believe he happily lived in France after 1975. He didn't return to Russia until maybe the early 2000s, and then definitely returned in 2012. But I think he enjoyed being in a free country and playing tennis, and then of course his level went down. It was already he kind of took it much easier, and his life consisted of playing simultaneous games and exhibitions for which he was getting paid decent money. He was trying to, I think, his idea was to make it economically break even, so he could have some time with the family. Built a cottage in the mountains, where my mother gave him a piece of land, and they happily lived this way. In the former Soviet Union, people don't realize, but when he built a house in France, he lived in a communalka. He grew up in very tough conditions, where you had hunger was a true problem. He mentioned that he had really bad recollections of soldiers' regiments in the metro crushing his bare feet because he had no shoes. And when he came to France, he built a cottage with toilets at every level. So I think you understand where it comes from, because in the communalka, you live at 7, 8 families in one apartment, and you have one bathroom for everyone. So it's very hard to fathom, to really understand what it was like to live in the Soviet Union. He mentioned it very often to me. He still loved his youth because he had all his student friends. We saw them coming at home, and they had nothing to do with chess. They were just like literature students that he knew from the Faculty of Journalism. And so this is why I have a very personal account of him, more than political or chess-oriented. His relationship to chess started at the age of 5. At the age of 5, he was at I think he was evacuated in Perm in an orphanage when the Nazis besieged Leningrad. His family must have stayed in the city. There was order of Stalin that all adults would combat. He was evacuated. He kind of learned how to play chess. He was born in 37, so yeah, 42, 43, that's when he kind of was acquainted to chess. And at the age of 11, he always told me, at the age of 11, I got a stipend. And then my family could live off this stipend because their father had abandoned them. So he was with Georgi and Iraida, my aunt, and they lived at the entrance of the communalka. So it was a hard life. It is important for me to see this exhibition because he's not doing so well now. He's quite isolated, and he's lying in bed now. So I thought it would be good, especially for my children, to see it. That's maybe the main reason is to have Alex and Theo see who their grandfather was, because Theo never got to see him. Only once in 2017. He was 2 years old. He doesn't remember anything. Alex saw him at the age of 5, so same thing, they don't really recall. I tell them stories, but here they see that, plus the welcoming was quite incredible. We've been welcomed like ministers, or I don't know, so it was so warm. The Midwestern hospitality was fantastic, and I think it will give them a sense of who my father was, because I can only tell them stories, and at the end it's quite limited, pictures, stories. Here it gives them a bit more. Favorite artifacts in the exhibition? I'm not sure, because it's so well done. You get so many pictures, so many films, it's impossible to pick one. I think the leaflets is extremely well done. It's fantastic. I'm going to steal a couple of yours. Posters. No, the chessboard is very impressive, the one you got from Reykjavik, because the design is very much from the 70s, and it looks good. No, everything is very well assembled, and maybe, yeah, what you got from the Pitigorsky collection on display is very impressive. Preparing for the 1972 World Championship, my father had assembled a team, and I heard that he had to basically fight with the Soviet authorities to get some kind of seconds. Can't remember if it was Nikitin or the same as in '92. I doubt it. And they had basically to deal with the logistics themselves. They had to get their bottles of water. They had to order coffee. So they tried to organize a bit of a training camp with outside of Moscow, in the outskirts, in the woods, with kind of log cabins, so they could play every day. The stories I can share about my father and Fisher are only ones of friendship, because my father always spoke very highly of him, always called him a kind of Don Quixote, he saw him as a hero, and that's why I grew up with some very funny caricatures at home, some that he had put under glass, where Fisher is Don Quixote and my father is Sancho Panza, just looking. And I think they consider themselves as buddies, but Fisher never went completely out of the paranoia that my father was a KGB agent, and so I think it was a joke. But then my father was kind of teasing him, saying, "You know what? I got promoted to KGB colonel." Following the match in 1972, down to 75, I can't tell you much. I wasn't there. I can only share what he told me, is that the sports committee was hard on him. They pressed him pretty much, saying that he was no longer going to be able to travel, which kind of was game over for his chess career. And he met my mother, who was working as a secretary at the commercial mission of the French embassy. They fell in love. They managed to do a bit of skating on frozen lakes. They had, I think, a beautiful romance. And then they left to France by fighting really hard with the authorities and benefiting from the Helsinki Accords, which allowed for the first time in history Soviet citizens to marry non-Soviet citizens. It's hard to imagine for us, but a Soviet citizen was not allowed to marry a non-Soviet citizen. So they did it. They arrived in Paris. So he had no money, so he had to play tournaments. He played in 77, I think, beat Vlastimil Hort. He was still in the top 20. But very quickly, not declined, but took it easy, and I think really enjoyed the French life. He was a bit chubby because of all these Soviet sausages and kind of greasy food, and my mother put him on a French diet, and then he looked much better, lost a few kilos, and she got him a few new clothes. It was the 70s. Things that people would not know about my father, I think that the reputation he has is quite truthful. What's been written in the press, he's been interviewed. He's always quite open. After a few glasses of vodka, I think he can crack a few jokes, and doesn't mind shocking people or even having a laugh. So no, there's nothing much. He's not a secretive person. He's never been a secretive person. So he enjoys spending time with chess enthusiasts, with kids, with adults. He's a pure chess man. Maybe he didn't read much about politics, but this is maybe common about. It's common amongst chess players. He was living a bit out of time. He would not follow Russian politics. He would not follow French politics. He would watch a lot of sports, Olympics, some skiing, a lot of tennis, and he had two worlds. He had chess for his kind of that was his professional setting in the universe, and tennis was the kind of the breather. He was watching tennis all the time. I'm going to make him look like a lazy guy, but he said it. Look, I'm quite lazy. I enjoy life, and he was quite adamant and straightforward that life should be lived well. So many people were coming home. The house was always free. I think there are some myths that we can myth bust about the 1972 match, simply because I was told the story of two human beings playing a chess match, and they become very good friends. So all the story around it is true, obviously. It's a historical fact that you had a Cold War, you had the US, the Soviet Union, they played in neutral territory in Iceland. But at the end of the day, they became very good friends. My father always had the greatest respect for Fischer, and they kept constantly in contact. They played again in 1992, being very happy to play with Fischer. My father always told me, not thank God I lost. He was not really a Christian, but he said, yeah, I lost, and if I had not lost, maybe Bobby would have walked away. So not a bad thing that I lost. So it was not really, it didn't have any resentment. And when they were presented, it's true that my father had a big Soviet machine, and I can, of course, and he gave all credit to Bobby for like as an individual to have learned chess by himself without having a big machine. My father benefited from the Soviet system, but he said that he was never a communist. He was never a member of the Communist Party. So he didn't have the machine behind it like many people think. Fighting a game without being a communist when you represent a communist country is not an easy exercise. So I don't think he's been portrayed as the representative of the Soviet Union, but he was not a member of their elite. He had all the perks of a chess champion because, of course, he had a trainer, he had a second, they had logistics. That's one thing. I think it's maybe one first myth we can bust. And the second myth, that you had the individual versus my father, who looked like, if you see that film with Liv Schreiber playing my father, it's a fun film, but my father never went to the beach with KGB agents besides him in a kind of white towel in San Francisco. My father goes to the beach with a simple swimsuit. So that's the myth you have. But it's an American movie, it's Hollywood, so it has to be a bit of emphasis. What I can think of my father seeing this exhibition, I think he would be extremely happy. And I can perfectly portray him if he was in full shape, to walking around, having a few drinks, chilling out with all the players, having fun with Rex and tapping him on the shoulder in the back. So I think it would be, that's his perfect setting. Chess enthusiasts, a warm welcome, and just sharing stories and all day long, and enjoying technical chess discussions. At the end, that's what it all comes back to, chess. I would like to thank the St. Louis chess community for having us, and for a wonderful time that we spent with the kids. And I've been very impressed by the cultural sites you have on offer between the City Museum, the Science Center, and plus being from French origin. Many French people tend to think that New York is the center of the US, plus San Francisco is the place to see. But I've been trained in Memphis, Tennessee, and I quite like the center of the US, the true US, if you can say so. My kids are delighted. And I must mention that meeting with John Costello for them was like meeting with an American hero. Baseball player, then he became a cop, then he's head of security. So from Irish descent. So this was really for the kids, really, you can do it better.